everybody, this is the M-Crew Dude. I'm back, but only for a while. Now, late last year, I found a game that was so bad that it deserved to be talked about. This game is, of course, The Quiet Man, not to be confused with the movie by the same name. Developed for PS4 and Steam by Human Head Studios and published by Square Enix, The Quiet Man goes for an interesting approach by featuring a deaf protagonist, where the character explores a world he can't hear. From that alone, it shows a great deal of potential of what they can do. Other games have incorporated some sort of disability into gameplay very effectively. Hellblade throws us into the position of someone tormented with psychosis, and Perception stars a blind character who has to use sound to navigate her surroundings while avoiding a stalking monster. With that, I was curious as to what the game was going to be like, but I was a little cautious after the E3 presentation, which doesn't really show us much of anything. In fact, it was simply known as the trailer where an edgy Hot Topic model beats up Hispanic people for telling him he had the wrong address. Ooh, sounds fascinating. Despite that, I was thinking that this game could be a lot like Late Shift, an interactive crime thriller where player choice is pivotal and you can achieve one of 6 different endings depending on what you do. That is what I rationally believe since the developer stated that this game could be finished in one sitting. Unfortunately, we got none of that, and this game has been called the worst game of 2018. Well, let's take a look and see what this game is really like. As soon as we see the menu screen, I have to say that it looks unappealing to say the least. The picture looks okay, but it seems like the developers decided to make it animated at the last minute, so they just threw on a few flickering lights. I've seen PS4 themes with better dynamics. Speaking of which, during the first week of the game's launch, you could buy the game at a discount and receive a bonus theme and a pack of avatars. Normally that would be some kind of pre-order bonus rather than something you just get at the time of purchase. It's almost as if the developers actually lost faith in their own project. The avatars look kind of bland, and the theme does have a few animated elements, so at the very least the theme is okay. Anyways, you start the game, and most of the story cutscenes are live action. It starts off promising, and there's even sound for this sequence for world building, I guess. Our main character is Dane, a young man who walks down the streets of New York with his hood up, only to remove it dramatically like he just left the auditions for the next Assassin's Creed. He walks down an alleyway and encounters a few gang members belonging to a group called Soul 33.
Yo! Wrong address, dog! No one ordering no chow!
Why would they assume that? Did Grubhub really go downhill? At this point, the game blends live action with gameplay, and you can see them attempt this right here when there's a sudden change. It's actually alright, but this is the only good time when it's done effectively. You're thrown into a combat segment with no tutorial at all, but you can review your moveset in the pause menu. Here, you get a brief tutorial on your attacks and dodge abilities, but there's no description, so it just looks really confusing. I do like how it's presented through neon signs, and I think this could have worked if it were introduced through the gameplay. So after Dane beats up the other 2 guys and concludes the E3 presentation, he goes inside the building and we get to fight even more gang members. Good lord, look at how ugly this is! It's like we've suddenly walked into a 2009 video game or something. The combat has no flow whatsoever, and mainly consists of punching, blocking, and a few special moves. Every now and then, you will be able to perform a super finisher on an enemy, but there's no indication as to when you will be able to do this. I don't know if an enemy has to lose enough health, or if it has to do with this blue lens flare, but there is no on-screen indication of anything. You don't even get a health bar, but instead, the screen just turns completely red if you're close to death. The way Dane also snaps to an enemy is also jarring, as there is no fluid animation. There is some use of audible sound when Dane walks or punches, but they all use the same thud sound. Whenever characters talk, all you hear is a faint harp-like noise, so maybe this suggests that Dane isn't completely deaf, or maybe he is just mentally internalizing his perception of audible sound. By the way, if you hear a heartbeat, press X or A to progress when it's the loudest. Another piece of advice the game never tells you. Also, there's another move that the game lies about. If you press circle or B, the tutorial claims that it's some kind of heavy attack or something, but it's actually a grab move where you can grab an enemy and either throw them or punch them repeatedly. But this has absolutely no effect, even though it looks like it's causing damage. I once did this to the same enemy 16 times, and he would just not go down, so what's the point? After Dane stares blankly as he takes back the suitcase, he goes to Club Moonrise to deliver the package. Hey, wait a minute, where are the subtitles? I swear I put them on. Alright, so I looked into it, and it turns out that the subtitles are set for moments that you are meant to understand. Note that does not mean what Dane himself understands, but what you as the player are supposed to understand. So, nothing, I guess. Sign language is rarely used, and I guess it's implied that Dane can read lips, but most people I know can't do that. Even if I give you the benefit of the doubt and say that you can understand sign language and you can read lips, I guarantee that you will not understand what is happening. More often than not, the camera will just cut away from a speaking character, or their face will not be visible. And good luck reading lips during the crappy gameplay cutscenes. This is probably a dubbing channel's fantasy, because you can just make up your own stories at this point. So I come back from the supermarket with a loaf of bread, because, I wanted some bread, and then I see that my dog took a piss all over the floor, and I don't have any paper towels. So what do I end up using? The goddamn bread! Oh, hang on a second. Yo, Dane, why the hell are you still wearing that jacket? Remember when I told you about the sale at JCPenney? 20 to 50% off all the way. No, it sucks. I bought this suit from Santos, and let me tell ya, best $50 I've ever spent. I mean, come on, man. You look like you should be reviewing video games on the internet. All you need is a fedora. By the way, you got some barbecue sauce on ya. Oh, that's not barbecue sauce. I was earning my Red Wings. Yeah. You're a farthead. Can't believe this crap. With no spoken dialogue, we don't know any of these characters' names, and I quickly became bored and uninvested since there's really nothing to enjoy. Even the scenes without Dane are nearly silent, so we clearly aren't put into his shoes. You would probably get the exact same experience watching any normal movie with the volume turned down. You also can't skip any cutscenes, probably because the developers would hate for us to miss any important story elements. Okay, joking aside, this is what I gathered from the plot alone. As a kid, Dane witnessed his mother being shot accidentally by the leader of Soul 33 and his boss because they were fighting over a pair of shoes. Now, Dane is working as a bodyguard for the black guy, and there's something to do with a drug trade and a girl from the lounge. Dane goes to watch her play because she looks like his mother. Ew. It's not explicitly clear if he's in love with her, but he seems to care enough about her to want to protect her. She's also dating the black guy that Dane works for, and we find out that she wants nothing to do with him. So a guy wearing a bird mask shows up and walks in through the front door unnoticed for some reason, and kidnaps the girl named Lala. Dane fights him in what was actually an unfairly hard boss fight due to the game's slow and confusing controls, and each time you die, you have to watch the mother make goofy faces at you. My advice is to force the boss into a wall or a corner to prevent it from blocking. The fight ends when Dane gets shocked and knocked out by the bird guy's cattle prod because he was actually stupid enough to touch the end. He doesn't just tap it, he closes his hand around it. When he wakes up, he has to fight even more enemies, and now there is a slight variety despite the constant reuse of character models. Guys who wear green are the standard foes, the ones with yellow carry some kind of weapon, and the red ones are tougher and hit harder. I guess Soul 33 has a uniform system, or they all just have a huge lack of fashion sense. The game quickly becomes aggressively boring, because there are several drawn-out sequences where you walk down an alley, beat up 5 to 6 people, and then walk down another alley to beat up even more people to pad out the game's length. You even return to previous levels to fight enemies for no real reason except to make the game longer. Apparently, the thugs are still trying to decide whether or not they want to watch this unnamed movie. Aw man, now I'm kinda curious. What are they watching, and did they get into a fight with the one guy who wanted to watch the commentary? To be honest, I'm surprised that I actually played this long, even though I understood very little about the overall plot, as it just seems to be a typical save the girl situation. Even most of the trophies are counterintuitive. There's even one where you are required to finish the game without getting hit once. How is that even possible? At the time I'm recording this, only 0.1% of players have this trophy, and I can't imagine how much hell that one poor soul had to go through. Whoever you are, please share your secrets. When you get to the end credits, we finally get to hear actual sound again, as the game thinks it's so entitled that it deserves an original song. Surprisingly, it's actually a really good song performed by Imogen Heap. Within the first week of the game's release, you would see a real-time countdown to a time when questions will be answered. What that really means is that a patch was released that allows you to replay the game a second time with full sound. Any rational and sane person would rather delete this game without a second thought than play through this crap again. Well, as I'm sure you all know by now, I am not rational and sane, so we're gonna get the full story. I just have to say that it's nice to finally understand what the characters are saying, and some scenes changed my perspective, but even then the story is hard to follow. Not because it's needlessly complicated or anything, it is just so ungodly stupid that it defies all rational logic. Alright, so here's the story. The gang leader Isaac and the black guy Tay fight over a pair of shoes, and then they struggle over a gun which accidentally goes off and kills Dane's mother. Isaac gets arrested and Dane's father Robert blames Dane for her death, even though he wasn't present at the time. Why? He knows who shot the gun, the suspect was arrested, so he has someone to hate. Instead, he just takes it out on the one closest to him and becomes abusive. To tell you the truth, I never got the impression that Robert was Dane's abusive father during the silent gameplay. He's always smiling and acting friendly, so I just assumed he was some sort of adult friend. Take, for example, this one scene where he tries to, quote-unquote, console his son.
All I wanted was a life with that woman. I don't think she was ever really with me. It's like you were born and the world just stopped. And today the sun went out because of you. I will never forgive you for what you took away from me.
Imagine you were watching this scene without audible dialogue. Is this what you would imagine is being said? Maybe this was intentional to serve as a red herring, but it's not very well implemented. So Dane creates a persona for himself called the Quiet Man, who resembles a Renaissance plague doctor. He does this to give himself something to aspire to be or something like that. Years later, Dane grows up and is now working for Tay as an enforcer in his gang. When Dane watches Lala perform, she gets kidnapped by the bird guy. You'd think that Dane would find this suspicious, but he hardly acknowledges it. The conflict between the two gangs escalates because of this, which angers Tay. Dane eventually tracks Lala to Isaac's penthouse, where he fights him in a poorly designed boss fight where he walks around like a Frankenstein monster, before Dane punches him out the window. After Dane defeats him, Lala explains that she faked her own kidnapping and is working with Robert, who is posing as the bird guy, I guess to lure both gang leaders to be arrested. Somehow, Robert expected Dane to rescue her, as he knew Dane would see the resemblance Lala has to his mother, and Robert also knew that Dane would end up doing all the hard work. Damn! This insane level of clairvoyance is so mind-blowing, it's physically hurting me. So, just to recap, she's being willingly used as a pawn to betray her boyfriend and Dane's trust in order to escape from the world, all because she happens to look like someone she's never met. And Dane hardly sees her as a bad person because he's blinded by her appearance, and uses this as a second chance to save his mother. Robert simply constructed some sort of elaborate revenge plot and abused Dane to shape him into a ruthless killer for this intended purpose. That might have sounded like a solid plot point, but it is so laughably terrible. Maybe I'm looking for context where there otherwise isn't any, but the game keeps throwing out all these confusing plot threads, so I'm forced to draw these bizarre conclusions. So, Dane and Robert break into Tay's office and fight off a bunch of his burly black henchmen. Seriously, why are all the standard enemies in this game either black or Hispanic? Robert does nothing to help, by the way, even when 6 of them run up wielding bats, and I came pretty close to quitting at this point. Tay comes out to talk for what feels like 10 minutes and drops a bunch of story exposition before the fashion sense guy, or whatever his name is, comes out and gets beaten up by Dane. So Tay shoots Robert and admits that he was the one who accidentally shot Dane's mother. Oh, what a twist. Then why did Isaac mockingly take credit for it? Is everyone in this world brain dead? Wounded, Robert tells Dane to put on the bird mask and become the quiet man hero to rescue Lala. As Dane confronts Tay, he attempts to shoot Lala, but Dane takes the bullet and dies. Now, let's play a bit of trivia about how the story will end. A. Tay proceeds to kill Lala, and then tearfully comes to realize that everything he has worked for is now in vain and commits suicide. B. Robert survives the gunshot and successfully arrests Tay while he comes to regret his treatment of Dane after seeing his body and redeems himself. Or C. Dane comes back to life as a bird demon and beats the crap out of everybody. Okay, cast your votes. Why? What kind of sense does this make? Bear in mind that this is a game where no supernatural elements were established beforehand. So yeah, Dane becomes the embodiment of mental illness and beats up the henchman and kills Tay. We even get flashbacks of all the good times they had together. All one of them. Lala unmasks Dane and just leaves while Robert returns, so he actually does survive, and then he puts on the bird mask before beating the crap out of Dane to serve as the final boss. I have no idea why. I guess he wants to redeem himself by letting Dane kill him in order to finally lay the quiet man to rest? At least that's what I think, even though that's a really stupid plan. Either way, Robert doesn't die despite being more odious than the real villains, and Dane gets arrested instead. There's even a new post-credits scene where Dane is released from custody and meets up with Robert.
We really gonna try for round two? Old man?
Game if you are. Son.
And I honestly can't tell if that's supposed to be sentimental or heartless. I'd expect nothing less from this game because it was trash. The gameplay is imbalanced, counterintuitive, and hard to get the hang of. The story is stupid, it doesn't make much sense even with audio, and the acting is truly ridiculous. Dane talks like a normal person, and I don't know if the developers ever met a deaf person, but they don't speak with perfect clarity. The music is atrocious, and the sound effects are silly and almost cartoonish. The graphics look outdated, and the screen effects look like someone threw food at the screen and tried to wipe it off with their sleeve. Both the graphics and audio are often glitchy with clipping issues, and moments of audio layered several times over. According to the developer, he wanted to capture the experience of communicating without words, in fond recollection of when he used to play video games with another kid who couldn't speak, and this drove his inspiration to create a story that can be told without sound. There is a lot of potential in that concept, but the end result went as far away from that idea as possible. It had a solid idea, but they just got lazy with it and couldn't find creative means of implementing it. I would say, don't waste your time on it. If you want a good interactive crime thriller, I would suggest Late Shift again. This is the M Crew Dude, signing off, wishing you all a very pleasant day.